Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and welcome to Screen Time. I'm Gary Tangui along with Drew Yano, where we screen movies, screening, and everything in between. So, Drew had a great idea this week because it's one of his favorite movies. It is a holiday classic. No, it is not The Waltons, which I remember always seeing on Thanksgiving for some reason, but it is John Hughes and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I watched it again today, and it is a classic. And Drew, I want to start right off the bat. You know, as a screenwriting professor, as a working screenwriter, you told me this is like the Holy Grail. This is a perfect movie.
Well, yeah, I don't know if perfect, but he's just such a good writer. And, for people who don't know John Hughes, and we're going to do a show on him, at some point. Great writer director who, did things like 16 Candles and all those high school movies.
Sure.
Right. Even Breakfast Club before this. And everybody thought, he was pigeonholed and that's what he could do. But then he wrote this based on his own experiences. He was an ad exec, and that's what he did before he became a screenwriter. And, he wrote this in 3 days. The interesting part is they filmed it and they had 3 hours and 45 minutes of film.
Right.
That's how many scenes they did. And the editor said it was the hardest movie he ever had to edit because there was nothing he wanted to take out. But it's the perfect Thanksgiving movie. It is the iconic Thanksgiving movie, in my opinion. Look, it's universal because everybody, it has to do with going home for Thanksgiving, and everybody's done it, right?
Sure.
And there's that. And then there's the travel thing, how everybody, like today it's crazy, but even then it was crazy. And so he came up with this based on an experience he had. And again, like Rain Man is iconic for the lines we think. And you just say Rain Man and it just like an image pops in your mind. You say Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and an image pops in your mind.
Oh, there's no doubt.
And you can describe like a travel nightmare you've had. And you're ultimately at some point going to say it was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Right.
And, you watch it again, and I watch it every Thanksgiving, and it's just, I love it for a lot of reasons. One, it's universal. Two, Candy and Martin are perfect together. Martin will say this was a turning point in his career because he shows dramatic chops in this.
No doubt.
And it's a comedy, but it's what I like to say, it's a comedy with heart, and that's what John Hughes did. And he he nailed it here. But I always say you get to that last scene in the movie, and if you don't have a tear in your eye, you're a robot. It's just great. But anyway, you talk. I can talk all day.
No, I know, but I you have so much knowledge about it, which I think is, which I enjoy. But if you haven't seen it, Steve Martin plays an ad exec who's trying to make it home from New York to Chicago for Thanksgiving. And, well, all hell breaks loose with travel. And he ends up hooking up with John Candy, right, who is a shower ring salesman. So you have this like marketing exec. He's very astute. He's very successful. And then you have John Candy. I mean, that's all you need. And they end up together trying to get from New York to Chicago. And the flight gets canceled. They end up getting on a train, as you would expect. Then they end up having to drive a car, and through Wichita, St. Louis, up to Chicago, they finally get home together.
And it's not just that they hook up. Candy steals his cab in New York City, right?
Right.
Steve Martin's cab. Steve Martin's trying to get to the airport.
Does Candy know? And the thing, Candy doesn't know it.
No, he doesn't know it, but he learns it
later.
Because, and he wants to. As a result, he wants to help Steve Martin get home. So Steve Martin is, as you said, a marketing exec, and on the other end, John Candy is a salesman, a shower curtain ring salesman.
Yes.
And think about that for a second, because they're both kind of in the same thing, but they couldn't be more opposite.
Right.
And it's just if you think about the premise, it's not a crazy premise. A movie about somebody trying to get home for Thanksgiving, universal. Yeah, okay, no big thing. Most people probably would have done it with the guy trying to get home to his family and runs into a bunch of problems, blah,
Right.
blah, 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 bunch of different people. No, he pairs him with John Candy, and Candy wants to help him get home. And they couldn't be more opposite. And it's just, when I say it has heart, you think of the scene in Wichita in the hotel room when Martin finally blows up. And Candy says, yeah, sure, I'm an easy target, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I like me. My wife likes me. And at that moment, you're hooked because you love John Candy now.
You know what? I want to stop you there for a minute because you know what's interesting about that? That's at minute 23.
Yep.
I wrote it down, which breaks a rule because, right?
No rules with views, but yes.
No, it doesn't matter. I mean, generally at minute 20, that type of scene would be on page 90 or page 85 or page 88. But he doesn't
get one of those too.
Well, he did that too. So, I mean, you have another one of those later on, but he does it on page 23. And when I rewatched it, I was like, wow, this happened sooner than I remember. And
well, he does it because he wants you to like Candy. Because he doesn't want Candy to be, Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man, right?
Right. So you have some sympathy for him where he says, I like me, and everybody can relate to that. That's also the famous hotel room scene where they're in the same bed together. And
one of the most quotable lines, those aren't pillows.
Right. Those aren't pillows. So Candy is on top of Martin and he goes, I have my hand on the pillows. And he goes, those aren't pillows. But it's one of those lines that it's always been exaggerated. Like when they get out of bed and they go, they were snuggling, then they get up and they try to be men. They go, oh,
How about the Bears game?
How about the Bears game? But when it was requoted with all my friends and stuff, we made it much longer. Like, how about the Bears? Oh, the Packers are going to be good this year. Yeah, look out for the Cowboys. It's like, and when I rewatched it, I was like, oh, there's just one line. How about the Bears? I thought there was a lot more.
Yeah.
So I just had to throw that in there. So it's great. But at page 23, it's like all is lost, which it breaks a rule. It works.
No, but he gets back in bed. They make up sorta.
Right.
I think of you, and I thought of you at this scene and others, because in my mind, what separates great actors from good actors is great actors can act with their face. They don't have to say a word.
Agreed.
Candy is unbelievable in this. In that scene alone, watch his face. Go back and watch it. Every emotion he's feeling, you feel because of the expression on his face. And it happens again at the end. It's all in the eyes, but even
all in the eyes.
It happens again in the train station, which we won't give it away if people haven't seen it. We'll talk about that, but we'll give you a warning so you can turn it off if you want. But yeah, he's just amazing. And Martin's great with his face too.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because there's a lot on my plate with the two performances. First of all, with Candy, there's no question. The eyes have it. And something's up with the wife, okay? When Candy says, he talks about his wife. And even just the little hints that he gives, and maybe because I've seen it before, you just know, he just gives you just enough to wonder. Not too much, but just enough. Candy was a great actor. He was great in JFK. Obviously he had great comedic talent, but I agree with you, Drew. In the tender moments with this, he makes you cry. On the other hand, with Martin's arc is tremendous. It's not too dramatic and it's not over the top. At the beginning of the movie, his wife says when he's not home and he calls and she says, what are you up to? Yeah. Like, what's going on? Because he said he's always at work. So there's trouble in paradise, right? Like she's like, he's got to be home more. And she's pissed that he isn't. And then you see him kind of arc organically. He arcs organically, and it's not over the top.
No, what happens is he realizes the kind of person he is, and Candy makes him do that, right? Because he judges Candy and thinks he's beneath him, and then he realizes, and that's why the scene in the train station, look, it killed me the first time I saw it.
You mean at the end?
I didn't see it coming. Now, I wasn't a screenwriter then, but I probably would have seen it now,
Right.
but maybe not. He, it's devastating, tears in your eyes when he says, and okay, everybody, cut here if you don't want to hear it, but when he says, I don't have a home, that's like, holy shit.
Right.
And then he says, she's been dead for 8 years. And, then you see Martin's face. Hughes cuts to Martin's face and he feels his pain. And you know what he's thinking right away. You know exactly what he's
Oh
thinking.
yeah, you know what he's thinking.
And they do the beautiful cut from
Right.
there. They're walking down the street, each one holding that trunk. And that trunk represents Candy.
Sure, it's his life.
It's his life. And now he's helping him carry it again. But yeah, it's just fantastic.
See, I thought the pivotal scene for me as an actor, no words. When the train breaks down, okay. And I mean, look, folks, it's a comedy. There's some reaches here, but you're okay with it. When the train breaks down and the conductor goes, you got to walk a mile this way to get a bus. And I was like, well, that's not going to really happen. I mean, whatever, who cares? And then he sees Candy pulling the trunk, right? Because Candy's basically homeless, right? And everything.
We don't know that yet, but
well, I mean, we don't know that. But in looking back
at
it, and is he homeless by choice? He's homeless because his wife is gone.
Yeah.
So he just lives on the road.
Yep.
So he's pulling the trunk, and then you see Martin look.
Just goes over and picks it up.
He goes over and he picks up the truck. No words, no dialogue. And that's when the movie takes a little bit of a spin, right? Takes a little bit of a spin and you're off and running. But for me,
we can't ignore the funny stuff though, because there's stuff in here that is just when the guy comes, the people train don't run from Wichita. That guy's a trained Shakespearean actor, by the way. It's hysterical, and he makes the wife get out and get the trunk. It's just,
I know.
It's hysterical.
She does it willingly.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I mean,
just think of all we mentioned the funny line, the pillows, but there's other subtle ones. Like my favorite line of the whole movie is, that's how Houdini died, because it's so brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's true. That is how Houdini died. He got punched in the stomach, ended up in the hospital, and 2 days later he died. But it's so unexpected to come out of Candy. You surprised me there. You shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have punched me in the stomach. That's how Houdini died, I burst out laughing. I still can't help it. Every time I see it, I laugh because that's brilliant writing. That's just brilliant writing.
Well, one of the keys to comedy is you're still laughing even though you know what's coming. Like what's coming ahead. Yeah. And it's the car. For me, the car, the whole scene with the car. So for people, obviously they're on the plane gets delayed, they can't get out. They take a train breaks down. Now they end up in the back of a pickup truck. Then eventually, somehow, some way, they get a car, right? And they're in the car and they're driving down the road. And it's just phenomenal where these two guys are in the car. And when Candy, and it's coming, when Candy gets both hands stuck because he's trying to take his coat off, and the car.
Suzanne and I do this all the time. It's like, because everybody has tried to take their coat off with the seatbelt on.
Yeah,
and it's hysterical. It's that's another priceless scene, and the cigarette in the back, and oh my God.
Oh yeah, and then later, that comes later. It's like I forgot all about the cigarette till they're out of the car, and they look at the back of the car, and. It's just such Candy and Martin, their performances were exemplary. There's just absolutely exemplary.
How about the scene in the bus? You talk about writing characters, right? From a screenwriting standpoint, how do you describe character? Well, you don't want to do it on the nose. You want it to come out kind of naturally. So they're on the bus and everybody's singing a song. Who knows another song?
Right.
And Steve Martin sings 3 Coins in a Fountain, which is about as obscure as you can get. And it's a romantic comedy from the 60s. And there's dead silence in the bus. And Candy doesn't say a word. He just starts singing, Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. And everybody starts singing it. And that's the difference between these two guys.
Well, from the opening scene, the book, when they're both in the airport, and Candy's got the book up and it's Canadian Mounted.
Right.
Which is, it's It's a dirty book, folks, but
Soft porn.
Canadian. Yeah, it's Canadian Mountain, and he took the hands down. You go, of course it is. It's John Candy. It's phenomenal, and it's watch it, people. It's just one of the all-time greats. I hope we haven't been too over the road with it, but from it's just tremendous, and they're not making movies like this anymore. They're just
No.
not, and it's too bad. We talked about that with streaming, how everything goes into a series now, and
But I
but
can't say it enough. It's so hard to make comedy, period. To make it with a heart, like he had to think, who am
oh
I going
yeah,
to make this guy? And I can't just make it, oh, they get along at the end. He gets deep. He gets deep here. This guy's homeless. And
oh
he's
yeah,
homeless, like you say, by choice, probably because he doesn't have a wife to go home to anymore. So it doesn't matter to him. He's just going on the road. And you can tell he talks to everybody and is friends with everybody because that's how he deflects the grief.
sure,
And I read that there was a line in there that they edited it out at the train station where he says, um, she died 8 years ago. I I act this way and I talk to everybody like this to get over the grief, but I couldn't let go this time. Meaning with him, he wanted to be with Martin
right.
because he felt a kinship. And I'm glad they left it out. It's a great line, and it's the kind of thing that you write and you don't want to kill your babies. That's one of those things where those are beautiful lines, but it's better that they're not in there because we know
We
that
know that.
that's why he's doing what he's doing. We don't need to be told, and it helps the scene, I think. But listen, it's every Thanksgiving I start thinking, when are we going to watch Planes, Trains? It's
Like, yeah, and you it's one of those movies at the end where it's very emotional, but also you have the stand up and cheer moment, which is when you go cut and they're carrying the thing down like Main Street, right? It's like
Yep.
they're walking down the middle of the street with a trunk.
And he says to Steve Martin, I'll just stay for a little time, a little while to say hello.
I'll just say hello. Yeah,
And it's like, no, that.
yeah.
And when she says, hello, Mr. Griffith, it's like,
I
kill
got a
me.
question about that. How did she know his name?
Because he's introducing Del Griffith to the both parents and the kids. And
Does he say she hears
he
the name?
does.
See,
This is Del Griffith.
Okay.
Yeah, I wondered too, but this time I listened for it, and he says, Del Griffith, hello, Mr. Griffith. And you're like, oh, you melts you, kills you.
Yeah.
Now, I always wonder what happened afterwards. Did he stay for dinner? Where did he sleep? Did they, did he get him a job in Chicago? Help him find a
no,
house?
he spent the night.
Well, I'm sure he did, but
Yeah, he spent the night. But my feeling is he spent the night, and I want to believe that it helped his healing, and he saw what Steve had, or he saw what Steve Martin character had, and said, "Okay, it's time for me to get on with my life." That's what I want to believe.
And they'll be friends, and he may not see each other, a million times a year.
When he comes into town.
Yeah, exactly.
But the whole thing with the shower curtains, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Shower curtain rings, selling them to everybody.
Yeah.
All right, Drew, great job. Listen, happy Thanksgiving. Watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, people.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll talk about Home Alone because it's another comedy with a heart. And that's the Christmas one. We'll do a Christmas show with Home Alone. I can tell you about all the students I had who used to quote from that movie Christmas time every year. And that's how popular that movie is.
Tremendous. For Giuliano and Gary Tagway, thanks for watching Screentime, movie streaming and everything in between. Happy Thanksgiving.